I remember that night like it just happened. The rain hadn't stopped for hours. It tapped against the windows in a slow, steady rhythm, the kind that makes you feel like the whole world's asleep except you. I was sitting at the kitchen table staring at the stack of bills spread out in front of me. My hands smelled faintly of oil and dust from the garage. I'd spent 12 hours fixing someone else's car, only to come home and realize I still couldn't fix my own life. We were 3 months behind on the mortgage. The letters from the bank had gone from polite to threatening. Final notice. Immediate payment required. I'd tried to shield her from it, tried to act like things were fine. But deep down, I knew she could feel the walls closing in too. Her name was Lila, a name that used to sound soft and warm when I said it. Lila, the woman who once laughed at my terrible cooking, who danced barefoot on the porch when the summer rain came down, who used to look at me like I was her whole world. That night, she didn't even look up from her phone. "Did you talk to the bank?" she asked, her voice flat. "Yeah," I said. "They're giving us till Friday." "I'll figure it out." She nodded, but there was something distant in her eyes. Something cold, like she'd already made peace with losing the house, or maybe something else. I sold my truck the next morning. The same truck my dad and I rebuilt when I was 17. It wasn't worth much, but it was the last thing I had that really felt like mine. I sold it to cover the debt. Every last cent went to save the home we built together. That night I came home late, exhausted but relieved. I thought she'd be proud. Maybe we'd finally catch a break, but the house was quiet. Too quiet. Her clothes were gone. The closet was half empty. Her favorite mug wasn't in the cabinet. The bed looked untouched, cold on her side. On the kitchen table, where I'd sat just the night before, there was a single envelope. No note, no explanation. Just the faint smell of her perfume clinging to the air. Inside the envelope was nothing. No money. No words. Just nothing. I stood there for a long time, waiting for my chest to stop hurting, waiting for some kind of sound. Maybe the front door creaking open, maybe her voice saying it was all a mistake. But all I heard was the clock ticking and the rain outside easing into silence. That was the night everything in me changed. When you give someone everything, your trust, your time, your sacrifices, and they walk away without a word, it doesn't just break your heart, it changes the way you see the world. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not the next morning either. I just stared at the empty driveway where my truck used to be and thought about how stupid love can make a man. But somewhere deep inside, something cold started to form. Something steady. I didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning of the end for Lila, because love might make a man blind. But betrayal, it teaches him how to see. The first morning without her didn't feel real. I woke up expecting to hear the shower running, or the smell of her cheap vanilla creamer mixing with burnt coffee. Instead, there was nothing, just the hum of the refrigerator and the ache in my chest. Her side of the bed was cold, the sheets wrinkled like she'd been restless before she left. The dresser drawers were half open. Even the little things, her hair tie on the nightstand, the book she never finished, felt like ghosts. I sat there for hours, waiting for her text, her call, something, but the phone stayed silent. At noon, I finally walked outside, needing air. The neighborhood looked the same. Kids riding bikes, Mrs. Patterson watering her plants across the street. But to me, everything felt different, like the world had quietly moved on and I was stuck in place. The debt was gone. The house was safe. But without her, it felt like saving a body after the soul's already gone. 2 days later, her sister called. "Hey, Mark," she said, her tone careful. "Have you heard from Lila?" I almost laughed. She left. Took her stuff, disappeared. Thought maybe she went to your place. "No," she said, and I could hear the confusion. "She didn't come here. She hasn't called me either." That made my stomach turn. Lila wasn't the type to just vanish without leaving a trail, especially not from her own family. For the next week, I barely slept. I called her friends, checked her social media, even drove out to her old apartment in Baton Rouge where she used to live before we got married. Nothing. It was like she'd been erased. Then, one night, I saw it, a photo on Facebook, one of those tagged pictures you don't expect to find. Lila, sitting in a restaurant somewhere in Miami, smiling. Across from her, some guy in a suit, his hand resting on hers. The caption read, "New Beginnings." That was the first time I felt anger sharper than heartbreak. I zoomed in on the picture until her face blurred. It wasn't the woman I'd married. Not the one who used to talk about fixing up our backyard or adopting a dog. This was someone else. Someone polished, rehearsed, a stranger wearing my wife's face. I wanted to message her right then. I wanted to ask why, but I stopped, because what would I even say? That I'd sold my father's truck for her? That I'd swallowed every ounce of pride just to save the house she'd walked out of? No, she didn't deserve that. Instead, I started to remember little things I'd ignored. The late nights at work, the new perfume, the sudden interest in going to the gym at 10 p.m., all the pieces I'd been too blind to put together. It wasn't that she'd left because of the debt. She'd been planning to leave long before I ever knew we were in trouble. The money, the house, that was just her excuse to wait until the timing was right. That night, I opened the drawer where I kept the mortgage papers and found something else tucked behind them. A business card. It belonged to a man named Ethan Cole, financial consultant. Miami address, I didn't need to think twice. The guy from the photo wore the same kind of suit, and suddenly it all made sense. The debt hadn't scared her away. It had been her way out. I sat there, staring at that card until the edges bent between my fingers. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't tired anymore. I wasn't broken. I was focused. Maybe it wasn't about getting her back. Maybe it wasn't even about hating her. It was about making her feel what it's like to lose everything you think you've won. So, I packed a small bag, closed up the garage, and by morning, I was on the road to Florida. Not to beg, not to fight, but to remind her what real loss feels like. Because if there's one thing I learned, you can forgive someone for leaving, but you never forget the silence they left behind. Miami didn't feel like home the moment I stepped out of the car. The air was thick, humid, and smelled like ocean salt and gasoline. The streets buzzed with people who looked like they were always in a hurry to be seen. Tanned faces, white smiles, expensive watches. It was the kind of city that fed off illusions, and I realized right away that Lila probably fit in perfectly here. I booked a cheap motel off Biscayne Boulevard, the kind where the carpet smells like old cigarettes and the air conditioner rattles louder than traffic outside. I didn't care. I wasn't here for comfort. I was here for answers. That night, I opened my laptop and typed Ethan Cole Miami into Google. His face popped up within seconds. Financial advisor, early 40s, big teeth, big smile. The kind of guy who called everyone buddy and made small talk while he robbed you blind with contracts you didn't understand. His office was on Brickell Avenue, sleek, expensive, overlooking the water. And then I saw her, in a photo from a charity event. Lila, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my last 2 paychecks. She was standing next to him holding a champagne glass, smiling like she'd never known struggle. It hit me harder than I expected. Not just the betrayal, but the ease with which she'd replaced everything we built. I closed the laptop and sat there for a long time, thinking about what kind of person she'd become, or maybe what kind of person she'd always been. The next morning, I went to see her. I parked a few blocks away from the office and watched from across the street. Around noon, I saw her walk out, confident, polished, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She got into a white Mercedes, laughing at something Ethan said before he kissed her cheek and drove off. My throat went dry. That easy, casual kiss, the same one she used to give me before leaving for work. I don't know how long I stood there, but when she drove away, I started following. She didn't notice me. Why would she? In her mind, I was probably still sitting in that old house, broken and quiet. She stopped at a cafe by the water. I parked nearby and waited, pretending to scroll my phone. She ordered a drink, sat by the window, and started typing on her laptop. Same posture, same habit of biting her lip when she focused. I almost forgot to breathe for a second. I wasn't sure what I was doing. Stalking her, spying, whatever you want to call it. But seeing her in that world, so detached from who she used to be, made me realize something. I didn't want to hurt her physically. That would have been too easy, too meaningless. I wanted her to see me, to know that the man she left behind wasn't gone, that I'd survived without her, that I'd built something better out of the pieces she broke. That was the revenge, but I couldn't do that as the man she knew, the broke mechanic from Texas who fixed cars and believed love could fix people too. I needed to be someone else. Over the next few days, I did what I do best, learned how things worked. I watched, listened, picked up details. Ethan Cole's firm handled clients with debt restructuring, small business financing, and investment accounts. The same kind of work I'd done for years before the garage. I understood it, maybe better than most of his staff did. So I went shopping. Bought a decent suit from a thrift store, got a haircut, and printed a fake resume. I called myself Mark Davis, small business consultant from Austin. Confident, polite, professional. And by Friday morning, I walked into Ethan Cole's office. The receptionist looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" "Yeah," I lied smoothly. "Ethan asked me to stop by. Said he wanted to discuss a possible partnership." She smiled, made a call, and 5 minutes later I was sitting across from the man himself, Ethan Cole. He had that firm handshake and fake charm of a man who'd never been told no in his life. "So, Mark," he said, leaning back in his leather chair, "what brings you to Miami?" I smiled. "Opportunities. And from what I've heard, you're the guy to talk to." He liked that. I could tell by the way his chest puffed slightly. I played along, kept it light, made him think I was someone he could use. When I walked out, he handed me his card. "Let's grab a drink sometime. I like you." As I left the office, I glanced back at the reception desk. And there she was. Leila. She was standing behind the front counter, sorting through some files. Her hair was tied up, her focus sharp. She didn't see me, not yet. But I saw her, and for the first time in months I felt calm, not angry. Not broken, just steady. She thought she'd buried me in that small town. But I was right there, breathing in the same air, walking through the same doors she thought I'd never find. Revenge didn't have to be loud. Sometimes all it took was being close enough for them to feel your presence and not know when the storm would hit. The day I saw her up close again, the air in that office felt too still. She looked just like I remembered. Same freckles across her nose, same calm expression she wore when she used to lie. Except now, there was something sharper in her eyes. She'd traded soft for strong, or maybe just learned to pretend better. It was Tuesday afternoon. Ethan had invited me back for what he called a follow-up meeting, but I knew he really just wanted to show off. Lila was there, standing beside him as he introduced me to the team. She was his operations coordinator. The title sounded fancy. I wondered if she knew what it cost me to pay off the mortgage that kept our old house in her name. "Mark, this is Lila," Ethan said casually. "She basically keeps this place from burning down." Her smile froze when our eyes met. For a split second, I saw it. The flicker of recognition, the panic she tried to hide behind her polished grin. "Lila," I said, steady. "Nice to meet you." She hesitated, just enough for Ethan to notice. "You two know each other?" She laughed softly. "I don't think so. Maybe he just has one of those faces." I nodded, keeping the smile easy. "Happens all the time." The rest of the meeting went by in slow motion. I answered questions, discussed fake numbers, let Ethan talk about his business vision. But every few minutes, I'd catch Lila glancing my way, searching for something in my face, some proof that I was real. After the meeting, she followed me out to the hallway. Her heels clicked fast against the floor. "Mark," she said under her breath, "what are you doing here?" I turned, pretending to think. "Working, networking. You?" "This isn't funny." Wasn't trying to be. I stepped closer, lowered my voice. "You look good, by the way. Miami suits you." She swallowed hard, her voice sharp. "You shouldn't be here." "And you shouldn't have left without a word," I said, my tone even. "Guess we both made choices." She looked around, making sure no one was watching. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I cut her off. You traded one kind of life for another. You found a man who could give you what I couldn't. Her lips parted, like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Then she turned and walked away, fast, her shoulders tight. That night, I sat in my motel room replaying her reaction over and over. She wasn't just shocked to see me, she was scared. Not the kind of fear you have when an ex shows up uninvited. This was deeper. She was hiding something. The next few days, I started learning how Ethan's business really worked. He ran an investment scheme that looked clean on paper but bled clients dry behind the scenes. Fake portfolios, hidden fees, insider deals. I'd seen this before in smaller garages and workshops where small business owners lost everything trusting guys like him. And Lila? She wasn't just his assistant. She was helping him pull it off, emails, client transfers, all under her signature. At first, I didn't believe it. I thought maybe she didn't know what she was part of. But then I saw her name on a wired document worth $500,000. She knew exactly what she was doing. That's when my revenge stopped being about heartbreak. It became about justice. I started small, made friends with the IT guy, helped him fix a network issue, got access to their internal drive. Nights turned into early mornings as I copied files, reports, transaction logs. Every piece of evidence that could take down Ethan Cole and the woman who walked out on me. By Friday, I had enough to ruin them both, but I didn't hit send. Not yet. Because watching her pretend, watching her walk into that office every morning and smile like nothing was wrong, that was its own kind of revenge. Then, late one night, as I was leaving, I found her waiting by my car. "I know what you're doing," she said quietly. Her voice shook, but her eyes didn't. "Then you know why," I replied. "You think this will fix what happened?" "No," I said. "But it'll make it fair." She took a step closer. "Ethan's not who you think he is. You have no idea what he's capable of." "Funny," I said. "That's exactly what he told me about you." For a second, her confidence cracked. Then she whispered, "You should leave town before you get hurt." And just like that, she was gone again, walking into the night, heels clicking against the wet pavement, like the past had finally caught up with both of us. I sat in my car for a long time after that. I'd come to Miami for revenge. But now I wasn't sure who was actually playing who. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept hearing her voice, calm, low, shaking with something I couldn't name. Fear, guilt, maybe both. "You have no idea what he's capable of." Those words sat in my head like a stone. By morning, I was sitting in my car across the street from their office again, a cup of gas station coffee cooling in my hand. Ethan's black Range Rover pulled into the lot right on time. A few minutes later, Lila arrived, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. She didn't look at him, didn't smile, just walked straight inside. Something between them had changed. I could feel it. The next day, Ethan called me into his office. His tone was casual, but his eyes had that sharp, assessing look I'd seen in men who didn't trust easily. "So, Mark," he said, leaning back in his chair, "you've been around for a week. You seem smart, loyal. Tell me something. Why Miami?" I smiled lightly. "Fresh start," he nodded slowly. "That's what everyone says." He paused, then added, "You don't strike me as the kind of guy who runs away from something. You strike me as the kind who runs toward it." I met his gaze. "Maybe both," he laughed, but it sounded forced. "Fair enough. You're a man after my own heart." That's when I noticed it. The file on his desk. The top sheet had my fake name printed across it. Mark Davis. But below that, I could see the edge of another document. A background check form. He was already digging. I kept my face still, said a few polite words, and got out of there fast. When I stepped into the hallway, Leila was waiting near the copier. She didn't say anything, just followed me out to the elevator. The doors closed, and for a few seconds, it was just the two of us in that quiet metal box. "You shouldn't have come here," she said again, her voice barely a whisper. "Then tell me what's going on," I said. "You think I came all this way just to watch?" She looked up at me then, eyes wet, voice cracking for the first time. "You don't understand. Ethan, he's not who you think he is. He's not even using his real name. He's laundering money through the company. The debts, the fake investments, he's tied to people who don't forgive mistakes." I frowned. "And you're part of it." "I didn't have a choice," she said, tears sliding down her cheek. "When I left you, I thought I was getting a clean start. But I got trapped. You think I'd just disappear without a word? He threatened to ruin me, Mark. He said if I didn't play along, he'd come after you." That stopped me cold. The elevator dinged open, but neither of us moved. "You expect me to believe that?" I asked quietly. "I don't care what you believe," she whispered. "But if you stay here, he'll find out who you really are. And when he does, it won't just be your house you lose." She stepped out and walked down the hall, not looking back. I didn't follow her. I just stood there, replaying every word she said, trying to find the lie. But the thing is, it didn't sound like one. That night, I went back through the files I'd copied. This time I looked deeper. Transfers, shell accounts, offshore holdings, the kind of paper trail only a desperate man would try to hide. And there it was, a name that didn't belong. Ethan Cole wasn't his real name. He was listed under a different alias in federal fraud records. David Lennox, accused of embezzlement 6 years ago in Chicago. The case went cold. He vanished. I leaned back in the chair, heart pounding. Lila was right. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was survival. The next morning, I got a text. Unknown number. "Meet me tonight. Same cafe by the water. Don't tell him. I knew it was her. When I got there, the place was almost empty. She was sitting in the corner, hood up, fingers trembling around a mug of tea. You found something, didn't you?" she asked as soon as I sat down. I nodded. "Enough to take him down." She shook her head quickly. "No, you don't understand. If he goes down, we go down. Everyone who ever worked for him. Our names are on the documents, the transfers." He made sure of it. "You expose him, and it all comes back to us. So, what do you want me to do? Pretend he's clean? I want you to walk away," she said softly. "You've already lost enough because of me." For a moment, neither of us spoke. I watched her fingers tighten around the mug, the way her lip trembled as she looked at me. The woman who once left me without a word now looked like she was the one being left behind. "Lila," I said quietly, "I didn't come here for forgiveness." "Then why?" "To make peace with what you turned me into." She exhaled slowly, eyes glistening. "And what's that?" "Someone who finally knows what it feels like to stop caring." She didn't look away. "You still care? That's why you're here." She wasn't wrong. But I wasn't ready to admit it. Not to her, not to myself. Before I could reply, her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, and the color drained from her face. "He knows," she whispered. "He knows we met." Outside, I saw a black Range Rover pull up to the curb. Ethan stepped out, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the cafe. Lila's hand gripped mine under the table. "Please," she said. "You need to go, now," but it was too late. He'd already seen us. 2 years had passed since the night Melissa vanished. 2 years of silence, rebuilding, and learning how to breathe again. The first few months felt like punishment. Every sound of the front door made me look up, half expecting her to walk in. Every unknown number that called made my heart pound. But she never came back. I eventually sold the house we'd fought to save. It didn't feel like home anymore, just a collection of ghosts and lies. I moved to Seattle, took a new job in finance, and started piecing together something like a life. My therapist told me that time wouldn't erase her, but it would blur the edges. She was right. The sharp pain faded, but it left behind a scar that still itched on rainy nights. Then one morning, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number and a text. "We need to talk. It's Melissa." For a few seconds, I just stared at it. My hands froze over the screen. 2 years of quiet, and she thought she could just drop in like that? I didn't reply. But the message dug into my thoughts all day like a splinter I couldn't pull out. That evening, she sent another one. "Please, I'm in trouble." That got my attention. Against every piece of logic I'd built since she left, I texted back, "Where are you?" She sent an address in Portland. A small motel near the highway. I hesitated for a long time before getting in the car, telling myself it wasn't forgiveness that drove me. It was a curiosity. I needed to see what kind of person she'd become, the woman who could look at a man who gave her everything and still walk away without a word. When I pulled into the cracked parking lot, rain was falling in thin silver lines under the orange lights. Room 17. The curtains were drawn, and for a moment I almost turned back. But something in me, maybe anger, maybe closure, pushed me forward. She opened the door before I could knock. For a second, neither of us spoke. She looked nothing like the woman who left. Her hair was dull, her clothes creased, her eyes tired. There was a kind of frantic energy about her, the way people look when they've been running for too long. "Hi, Ethan," she whispered. My name from her lips sounded strange. I'd forgotten how soft her voice could be. I stepped inside. The room smelled of cheap air freshener and desperation. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I almost didn't," I said. "But you said you were in trouble." She looked down, twisting her fingers. "I made mistakes, Ethan, big ones. After I left, things got bad. I thought I'd find something better, someone who could give me what you couldn't. But I ended up with people I shouldn't have trusted." Her voice trembled. "I owe money, real money, and they're coming after me." For a long moment I didn't say anything. I just watched her. The woman who once said she didn't believe in love unless it was convenient now sat in front of me, broken, asking for help. "You left me with nothing," I said quietly. "I covered the debt. I sold my car. I lost my job. And you just disappeared." Tears filled her eyes. "I know, I was selfish. I thought I was escaping a sinking ship. I didn't realize I was the one drilling holes in it. I almost laughed. It was too perfect, too poetic. What do you want from me, Melissa?" "Just a place to stay. A few days, until I figure things out." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You think I'm still that man? The one who fixes everything for you?" She didn't answer. Silence filled the room, heavy and sharp. Finally, I said, "I'll pay for your room for 3 nights. After that, you're on your own." She looked up, startled. "You'd do that for me?" I nodded slowly. "Not for you. For the person I used to be. He deserves closure." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. I left the room and stood outside, feeling the rain hit my face. I should have felt angry. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, all I felt was tired. As I drove back to Seattle that night, something inside me shifted. For years, I'd wanted her to come back just so I could show her what she'd lost. I'd imagined the revenge, the perfect moment of payback. But standing there in that cheap motel room, seeing her so small, so hollow, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like release, because revenge isn't always about making someone else hurt. Sometimes it's about finally being free enough not to. Still, part of me knew it wasn't over. Melissa had a way of turning back up when you least expected it. And deep down, I could sense that the storm she carried wasn't done with me yet. 3 days passed. I didn't hear from her. I told myself I wouldn't check. But by the 4th morning, I drove past that motel again. Some part of me still tethered to the ghost of what we used to be. Room 17's door was wide open. The bed unmade. The place empty. For a second, I thought she'd run again. Then the manager, a tired man with a coffee stain on his shirt, walked out and said, "You lookin' for the lady in 17? I nodded. "She left early this morning. Paid up, said to tell you thank you." That was all. No note, no goodbye. Just the same silence she'd left me with 2 years earlier. I should have been angry, but I wasn't. There was a strange calm settling over me. The kind that comes after a storm finally moves on. I realized she hadn't changed, and I didn't need her to. That chapter of my life was done. A week later, I got an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a folded note and a check for $50,000. The note said, "For the debt. For everything. I'm sorry." I sat there at my kitchen table, the paper shaking in my hands. $50,000. Almost the same amount I'd lost to save our house. I didn't cash it. I kept it in a drawer, not as money, but as proof that she still had a conscience buried somewhere under all the wreckage. Months went by. My life settled into something steady. I met someone, Alyssa, a graphic designer who laughed easily and never made me feel like I had to prove my worth. We started small. Coffee, long walks, late-night talks about nothing and everything. I didn't tell her about Melissa right away. When I finally did, she just nodded and said, "Sometimes, people have to lose everything before they can learn what matters." She was right. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the skyline, I drove back to the old neighborhood. The house we once called ours had been remodeled. Fresh paint, a new porch swing, kids' toys scattered in the yard. A different life entirely. I stood by the gate for a while, thinking about the man who once stood there desperate to save what couldn't be saved. The man who believed love meant sacrifice, even when the other person didn't. That man had died somewhere along the way, but maybe he was meant to. Sometimes I still think about her, not with bitterness, just a quiet kind of wonder. She was the storm that tore through my life, but in her wake, she left clear skies. Revenge, I learned, isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's peace. It's building a life so full, so steady, that the past has no power left to shake it. That night, as I walked back to my car, I took one last look at the house. Then I whispered to the wind, "Goodbye, Melissa." For the first time in years, I actually meant it. And when I drove away, I didn't look back.